Every great spiritual tradition understands that there is a movement coming from the unified source, what the Greeks would call the One, the creator of all being, down to all the levels of manifest creation. There are always different terms that are used for this in different traditions, but the ideas are almost always the same. So from the original unified source, we then have the movement into polarity, the yin and yang split as described in Chinese metaphysics. Then the 2 becomes the 3, 4, etc., and becomes what the Chinese refer to as the 10,000 things, by which they mean all the differentiated systems that exist in the world. So, seen from a higher spiritual perspective, this is the movement from the unified being behind all of creation, which may be called the Godhead, it may be called Brahma, it may be called many things in many traditions, down to the levels of created beings. In most traditions, there are the understanding of higher beings that in the West we would often refer to as angelic beings, that are of a station above the human race. In some ancient texts, they are referred to as the elder ones, or the elder beings, because they have been around for much longer than the human race has. They have attained very high states of evolution. They have very high states of consciousness and activity. And so, as an emanation from the Godhead, we then have the creation of all of these higher angelic ranks, spiritual hierarchies, devas, whatever they're called in whatever tradition. Then, at a certain point of the creative process, you then have the creation of the human being. The human being is understood in the Western tradition as the next spiritual hierarchy. We are the spiritual hierarchy in kindergarten. We are brought into the physical world and have our toys and memory stripped from us to go through an educational process here in the world of dense form. Then, as we go further into the world of dense form that was created to help us, we then have all of the elemental beings that the higher spiritual hierarchies created to give us a realm in which we could work. And then all the way down into the substructures of the physical, where we have the different biological, molecular, atomic, and such structures. But everything is understood in all classical traditions as a ladder, as a chain, as a circuit, as a spiral of movement from the one to the many and then back to the one. One important differentiation in understanding the great chain of being is between what in the Western tradition would be called hierarchical beings and what's known as elemental beings. Hierarchical beings are understood as things like the higher angelic beings, all the angelic ranks, of which there are 9 in the classical Western tradition. And then the human being is also considered to be a hierarchical being. What defines a hierarchical being in this Kabbalistic sense is that we contain within us, just as do the higher angelic hierarchies, one spark from the ocean of fire that is the Godhead. That's a common Kabbalistic way to express it. What is the unified source? It's an ocean of fire that is pure consciousness. We are given one spark from that ocean of fire to allow us to become an individual, independent spirit being. And so any being that has an independent spark from the unified source, to which they can then develop the capacity for independent action at a high level, is understood to be a hierarchical being. Now that's different from an elemental being. An elemental being is one which is created by a hierarchical being to perform a specific function. So the elementals that are the best known are what are referred to in the Western tradition as the nature elementals. So the elementals of earth, air, water, and fire. These are not hierarchical beings. They do not have individual selves. They do not reincarnate. They do not have individual choice to go on a different evolutionary path. They are part of a group unity, and they were created by the higher hierarchies. As we move toward the levels of dense form in the great chain of creation and life, we can begin to see the different kingdoms of nature that we exist in as a human being in a physical body. So we have the mineral kingdom. The mineral kingdom that forms the solid matter of the world and also the solid matter of our physical bodies pertains to the earth level and to that solid physical substance. But if we were then to add a life energy to it, if we add to it the etheric life body, it will become animated, and at that point it becomes a plant. The plants have the capacity to grow and to wither in a way that crystals do not. They respond to dynamic vibrations like the sun, with opening and closing. And this shows that at this stage they've moved from just the mineral substance to a life body that can go through cycles of life activity. Then at the next level, we have the animals. The animals can do something that the plants cannot, which is that they can move from one place to another. They derive that capacity because they have a yet higher aspect that's integrated into their structure, which is what is commonly known in the West as the astral body. The astral body is the body of desire. It is the body in which we have sympathy and antipathy. We are drawn to certain things or away from certain things. We have certain levels of instincts beyond what the plants have. There are certain forms that are transitional between the plant and animal. For example, the Venus flytrap, which has become carnivorous and opens and closes in consuming the fly, is actually in an intermediate stage between plant and animal. So the animals have added in the astral body to the etheric body and physical body that you have in the plant and mineral kingdoms. Then for the human being, we've added in a higher capacity, the capacity to become self-aware, what in the West is usually described as the I am self-awareness, because it comes in with the human ability to say I am, and to recognize oneself as separate from the group that one is born a part of, to be an individuality. And that is directly related to our higher spiritual consciousness. In understanding that we are a part of a great chain of life, one part of that is that we as human beings are living on the earth as a living being itself, that we are responsible and stewards of the earth. In the way that we are poisoning the earth today, we are in fact destroying an essential part of the chain of all being that we are dependent on to go through our evolutionary process for spiritual initiation in a physical body on the earth itself. If this ends prematurely, we have no one to blame but ourselves. Now this is then bringing us to the point that we need to bring together the spiritual knowledge and the healing sciences of all the traditions to create a new science of earth healing. We now have the release of information from all over the earth that we can use to combine with modern science and technology to create that new science of earth healing. And with that, we will be fulfilling our responsibility and our place in the chain of being to sustain the life of the earth that gives us life.